There is a mistake that many mothers make, and it does not come from cruelty. It does not come from selfishness. It comes from love. Deep, consuming, lifelong love. But love, when it loses its boundaries, can become a kind of cage. And today, an elder wants to speak directly to your heart about this. If you are a woman who has passed 60 years of life, if you have raised children, if you have given decades of your existence to their well-being, to their needs, to their futures, then these words are for you. Stay with me until the very end, because what this elder shares may be the most important thing you hear this season. In a valley nestled between two mountain ridges in the land of the Cherokee people, there lived an old woman named Sequoia. She was 73 years old, and her hands carried the memory of everything she had ever touched, the soil of gardens she had tended, the foreheads of feverish children she had cooled in the night, the rough bark of trees she had leaned against when the weight of the world pressed down too hard. Sequoia had 4 children. She had given them everything. Every meal, every prayer, every sleepless night, every sacrifice that a mother makes when she decides that her children's lives matter more than her own breath. And now her children were grown. They had houses, spouses, their own children. They had full lives, and Sequoia was alone in a way she had not expected to feel alone. She had done everything right. She had loved without condition. She had given without measure. So why, she asked the fire one cold evening, why does it feel as though I am waiting for my own life to begin? The fire did not answer, but the elder who sat across from her did. Among many native peoples, there is a teaching that the stages of a woman's life are like the 4 directions of the wind. Each direction carries its own gift. Each direction asks something different of you. The mistake many women make is believing that one direction is more sacred than the others, that the years of mothering, of nurturing, of pouring yourself into small hands and growing hearts, that those years are the only years that matter. But the elder, a woman named Dawnstar, who had seen 91 winters and walked with the patience of someone who no longer feared time, she looked at Sequoia across that fire, and she said something that changed everything. She said, "You were a woman before you were a mother. You will be a woman long after your children have stopped needing you the way they once did. The question is not whether they love you. The question is whether you still know who you are." This is the first lesson, and it is the one that cuts deepest. After 60, after 70, many women wake up and realize they have spent so long being someone's mother that they have forgotten how to simply be. They measure their worth by how often the phone rings. They measure their joy by how many grandchildren visit. They organize the calendar of their days around the availability of their grown children. And when that availability is limited, as it almost always is, they feel abandoned. They feel forgotten. They feel as though they have been discarded. But here is what Dawnstar taught Sequoia, and what the ancient wisdom of countless generations confirms. Your children's busyness is not a rejection of you. It is simply the natural movement of life continuing forward, the way a river does not wait for the stone it passed yesterday. When you make your children the entire center of your world after 60, you are not giving them a gift. You are placing on their shoulders a weight they were never meant to carry. You are asking them, without saying the words, to be responsible for your happiness. And that, my friend, is too heavy a burden for any child, no matter how much they love you. Sequoia sat with those words for 3 days. She walked the trails near her home. She watched the way the deer moved through the early morning fog, purposeful and without apology. She noticed how the old oak at the edge of the clearing did not lean toward the younger trees. It stood in its own fullness, rooted and whole, and the younger trees grew beside it, not beneath it. On the 3rd day, she went back to Dawnstar and said, "I think I have been leaning instead of standing." Dawnstar smiled and said, "Now we can begin." The second lesson is about identity, and it arrives quietly, like snow. Many women past 60 have a strange and painful experience. When they are asked who they are, they answer with the names of their relationships. I am a mother. I am a grandmother. I am the daughter of someone, the wife of someone, the caretaker of someone. And while all of these things are true and beautiful and worthy of deep honor, they are not the whole answer. They are roles. Roles change. Roles end. Roles do not die with you. In many tribal traditions, the elder years are considered a sacred time of return. You return to yourself. You return to the things you loved, before the world asked so much of you. You return to the particular way your spirit wants to move through the remaining seasons of your life. There was a woman in the Lakota tradition, known in her community as the woman who came back to painting. She had raised 7 children. She had been a midwife, a cook, a healer, a keeper of stories. In her late 60s, after decades away from it, she picked up a brush again, not because anyone asked her to, not to show anyone anything, but because something inside her remembered what it felt like to be fully herself. She painted until the end of her days. And those paintings are still held sacred in her community, not only for their beauty, but because they are the visible evidence of a woman who chose herself without abandoning anyone. That choice does not make you selfish, it makes you whole. And whole women raise the emotional ceiling of every room they enter. The third lesson arrives in the form of a question, and this question may be uncomfortable. But discomfort, the elders always say, is where the real growing happens. The question is this: are you using love as a way to avoid your own life? Sometimes, and this must be said with great gentleness, the constant focus on children and grandchildren is not purely love. Sometimes it is also fear. Fear of silence, fear of irrelevance, fear of confronting the parts of your interior life that were put aside so long ago they feel like strangers now. Fear of asking yourself what you want when there is no one's need pressing against yours. Dawnstar once told Sequoia a story about a woman who called her daughter every single day, sometimes twice. She gave advice that was not asked for. She commented on choices that were not hers to make. She arrived at family events already knowing what needed to be corrected, and she believed absolutely and sincerely that all of this was love. But her daughter was slowly pulling away. Her grandchildren became quieter when she entered the room. The visits became shorter. And the woman could not understand why the more love she poured out, the more alone she felt. Dawnstar said, she had confused presence with control. She had confused love with need. She did not know where she ended and her children began. And so her children, in order to find their own air to breathe, had to step back from her. This is not a story of bad children. This is not a story of an unloving mother. This is a story of boundaries that were never drawn, and the quiet suffering that lives on both sides when they are absent. The fourth lesson is one the elders call the teaching of the returning river. Water does not love any single stone more than another. It moves, it finds its path, and when the path is blocked, it finds another way. It does not sit beside the stone and grieve. It does not wait for the stone to move. There is a moment in every woman's life, usually after 60, when she must let her children go again. Not in the way she let go when they were small and learning to walk. This is a deeper letting go. This is releasing the belief that their happiness is her responsibility. This is releasing the belief that her own happiness depends on their nearness. A Navajo elder once said to a group of younger women, "The greatest gift I ever gave my children was learning to live joyfully without them. Not because I did not love them, but because they needed to see that a woman could age with fullness, not with emptiness. They needed to see that their leaving did not destroy me. And that proof of my wholeness gave them permission to build their own lives without guilt." When your children see you thriving, see you curious, see you engaged with the world and with yourself, they are freed from a fear that lives quietly in every child of an aging parent, the fear that their independence is hurting you. Give them the gift of knowing you are well, not just surviving. Well, Sequoia began to change in small ways. She started walking the trails at dawn, alone, not because she needed exercise, but because she had forgotten what it felt like to begin a day without immediately reaching for her phone. She planted a garden that was just for her, not for guests, not to send food to her children's homes, but a garden that was entirely, unapologetically hers. She began learning the old songs that her grandmother had sung, songs she had not made time for in 40 years, and something shifted. Her children noticed. They called more often, not because she was waiting, but because when they did call, she had something to share. She was interesting again, not only to them, but to herself. One of her daughters said to her, "Mother, you seem lighter. What happened?" And Sequoia said, "I stopped carrying something that was not mine to carry." The fifth lesson is about forgiveness, and it is perhaps the most necessary of all. Many women past 60 carry invisible wounds, disappointments about how a child turned out, grief over distance, real or emotional. hurt from words spoken in moments of tension that were never fully healed, resentment that hardened quietly over the years into something that feels like simply the way things are. The elders are clear on this. You cannot step into the fullness of this stage of life while holding the weight of old injuries, not because forgiveness is owed to those who hurt you, but because unforgiveness lives in your body. It ages you in the deepest places. It colors every moment with a tint of shadow. In the Ojibwe tradition, there is a practice called releasing to the water. You speak your pain to a moving river. You say it plainly, without decoration. And then you watch the water carry it away. Not because the pain was not real, but because you have decided that the remaining days of your life are too precious to spend as a keeper of old grievances. This is not weakness. This is the kind of strength that only comes with years. The sixth lesson is the one Dawnstar saved for last, and she delivered it on a morning when the first frost had touched the valley, when the trees were bare and the sky was the specific gray that comes before snowfall. She said, "The woman who learns to love herself at 60, at 70, at 80, she becomes a medicine for everyone around her, not because she tries to be, but because wholeness is contagious, groundedness spreads. When you know who you are and you are at peace with the life you have lived and the life you are still living, you emit something. The grandchildren feel it, the children feel it, even strangers feel it when they pass you on the path. You do not need to be needed in order to be loved. You do not need to make yourself indispensable in order to matter. You matter because you are here, because you carry decades of living in your hands and your eyes and your stories, because the particular way you have moved through this world cannot be replicated. But you have to believe that, truly believe it, not as a thought you have once and forget, but as the foundation of how you meet each day. Sequoia lived many more years after that winter by the fire with Dawnstar. She lived them differently, with intention and with space and with a kind of quiet delight that surprised even her. Her relationships with her children deepened, not because she was less present in their lives, but because the presence she brought was no longer weighted with need. She brought curiosity instead of expectation. She brought stories instead of advice. She brought herself, fully herself, and that self was worth knowing. When she passed, her children sat around her, and each one said the same thing in different words. They said, "She taught me what it looks like to live well, not perfectly, not without loss, but well." So here is where this story comes back to you. Right now, in the life you are actually living. If you have given everything to your children, honor that. It is sacred work. But now ask yourself honestly, what have you given to yourself lately? What part of your own story have you set aside because there was always something more pressing, someone who needed you more? The elders say that the second half of a woman's life is not a decline, it is a deepening. It is a time when the roots go further down, not because the tree is dying, but because it is becoming something the wind cannot move. You are not waiting for your life to begin. It is happening right now, in this moment, in the particular quality of the light around you, in the breath you are taking as you hear these words. Go plant something that is only for you. Call a friend who knows the name of the person you were before you became someone's mother. Sit with the silence until it becomes comfortable, because in that silence, your own voice begins to return. And when your children call, answer with fullness. Answer from a place of wholeness. Let them hear in your voice that you are well, that you are present, that you are still becoming. That is the greatest gift a mother can give her children in the later years of her life. Not her sacrifice, not her waiting, not her longing, her wholeness.